We are in a series that we're calling What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do. And that's important because we all come up against these moments in our life, these times or periods in our life, or maybe just an event where we don't really know what to do. There's this thing that comes up. Everything's going along, where everything's hunky-dory, rainbows and unicorns, all that. And then all of a sudden, bam, it's not. It's not fine. And not only is it not fine, because it's not fine, we don't know what to do or how to handle it. Sometimes we don't even know who to ask, do we? Well, we've been in this series because we want to talk about approaches and things we can do to handle those moments when we come up against them that we just don't know what we're supposed to be doing. And I'll be honest with you, right now, I don't know what to do. Right now, I just don't really know what to do about my kids' sleep schedules. When you're dreaming about being a parent and coming to all of that, and you're thinking ahead to all of that stuff, nobody tells you in those moments, I guess because you're not talking about it very much, but nobody tells you in those moments about how little sleep you're actually going to get, especially when they're young. And then the second you're about to have the baby, right, those months leading up, then everybody wants to start telling you then, you're never going to sleep again. That's when they tell you, after it's too late. It's too late. And you start to lose a lot of sleep, but even more so with my kids. I have two little girls, and they have opposite sleep schedules. Here's the problem. We just put them in the same room in bunk beds, which is cool because they love each other, and they get along really well for the most part. But we'll wake up in the morning, and one of them has moved into the other one's bed, and they're just snuggled up. And that's cute and nice and wonderful, except when they don't sleep. Because then I can't sleep. Then nobody else can sleep. Now we have this, our older one is a night owl. She's a night owl, man. She'll stay up all night, especially if there's a TV on. Oh, man, all night. She won't move if there's a TV on. She just stares at it and goes into some zombie catatonic state. That's her go-to. But so she's a night owl. And at night, her entire life, up until this point, she has sung herself to sleep. It's really kind of cute, right? She'll sing herself to sleep. Even when she didn't have words that came flowing very well, she would just hum to herself a little bit and sing herself as a very, very little child. My other kid is not a night owl. She's an early riser. The little one's an early riser, and she wants to go to bed. Right when she gets in her bed, she's ready to turn over and go to sleep. There's no singing involved. There's none of that stuff going on. And so you can imagine these competing schedules for sleep are messing up my sleep schedule a little bit. I was walking out this morning. I'm like tiptoeing around, and all of a sudden it's like 5 a.m., and all of a sudden the door opens to their room, and the little one's like, "Daddy, I get up now?" No, go back to bed. We had to get her a special little alarm clock that when it's time that she can get up, that a sun appears on it. And so we say, look, when Mr. Sun is on there, then you can get up. She doesn't care. She doesn't. She just wants to get up, man. She just wants to get up. But it leads me to ask you this question. Do you sleep enough? Right? Because I'm tired a lot of the time. Like just going throughout the day, I'm just exhausted a lot of days. Are you getting enough sleep? And to help you answer that question, I want to give you some facts. Here's the first one. Kids are supposed to be sleeping 9 to 11 hours a day. No, 9 to 11 hours. That's like elementary, school-age kids, right? Younger kids got to sleep more hours. Like the babies, 11 to 19 hours, somewhere in there. Adults, though, are supposed to be sleeping 7 to 9 hours. Now, without a show of hands, I wonder how many of you are getting that amount of sleep. Well, studies show us that in all actuality, less than 7 hours of sleep is what 1 in 3 adults will get. Looking around the room, or maybe looking around at home if you're watching from there, 1 in 3 adults get less than 7 hours of sleep, less than the recommended amount of sleep. And I can tell you that is me on a lot of days. And that's important because a lot of stuff goes on. Like if you're not sleeping enough, you're not making the wisest decisions that you could be making. Sometimes it plays a major role in your mental health. And if your mental health is down, and sometimes it's like the cyclical thing with your sleeping schedule. We also know this, that 40% of all Americans get less sleep than they should. So that's not just adults, that's also kids and teenagers. Think about that. Think about how many of these teenagers, I worry about a lot of our teenagers because they have phones that are always with them, and it's like making their brains go off, these synapses in their brains and electrons and whatever else is in there in your brain is firing off whenever you see the stuff on your phone light up, right? All the infrared things, and they've got video games they're playing on. I know a lot of these kids who are staying up till 2, 3 in the morning and then going to school at 6:30, not getting enough sleep. This has a major impact on things like our mental health. But what should all of these facts tell us? And maybe you're thinking about for yourself, what does it say about me? Well, I think it tells us this: we just don't know how to sleep. And maybe by extension, we don't know how to rest. We don't know how to take time to do those things. We don't know how to prioritize sleep in our life. And that's just in the course of normal, everyday life. That's not even counting when things aren't going well. That's not even counting when we're confused or there's a lot of tension or anxiety in our lives, right? When you're up against those moments, I mean, we've all had those sleepless nights, haven't we? We've all had that time when everything was so tense in our lives, or there was a big pressure situation, something that we were really worried about, and that kept us from sleeping. I've had those moments. In fact, when I think about sleepless nights I've had in my life, I think back to college. It was the first time I was really studying the Bible, and I started seeing some scriptures. Well, they just didn't sit well with me, and it caused me to challenge my faith. I started looking at particularly some scriptures from the Old Testament. And the image, the picture of God in those pictures didn't jive very well with the image of God I saw in Jesus, right? Because in Jesus, I saw that God is loving and kind and sacrificial and wants me to love other people and wants me to be sacrificial. But then when I was looking at some of these stories in the Old Testament, I said, man, God looks like he's mean. God looks vengeful. Doesn't look a lot like Jesus. And that kept me up at nights because that really rattled my faith. Maybe you've been there. Maybe you're still there. Maybe you know somebody who's there. It rattled my faith. I didn't know how to deal with that. Well, as I was dealing with it, I came across this story one time. I was working through all of these things. I came across this story about a man named Elijah. Now, Elijah was a prophet in the Old Testament, in the early history of the kingdom of Israel. You maybe have heard his name before, but I don't know if you know what a prophet does in that time period, but essentially a prophet has one job, and it's expressed in 2 ways. Number one, this prophet speaks for God, right? So that's the prophet's job. They speak for God. Now, when we talk about prophets, a lot of times the first thing we think of is this person is able to predict the future. And that is a function, to be fair, of prophets sometimes throughout the Old Testament and sometimes throughout the history of the church, that they're able to say this is what's going to happen, which makes sense because they are speaking for God. But more often than not, what they're actually doing is throughout the Old Testament, throughout the history of the early church, even today, a prophet is somebody who is calling out unholy things. Somebody who is speaking on behalf of God and calling people to repentance, saying, you're doing this wrong, you need to say you're sorry and start living right. Essentially, that's what they're doing. And that's what Elijah did all the time. Now, you can imagine, if you had that job, there'd be a lot of leaders who didn't like you. There'd be a lot of people in authority and in positions of power who did not prefer you to be around or saying anything to them or about them ever. Because Elijah would walk up to the king of Israel and say, hey, you're what's wrong with this place. You need to get it fixed because you're leading all these people astray. And if you don't, we might all die. This was normal for a guy like Elijah. Now, he could do incredible feats and miracles and things like that. He could do stuff like that. He was known. He brought people back from the dead. But they still didn't like him around the palace. They didn't often prefer his presence around the palace because he made them feel very, very uncomfortable. Well, one of the kings that he dealt with was a guy named Ahab. He's a king of Israel. And Ahab was not so concerned with serving the God of Israel. He was not very concerned with it. In fact, his father hadn't been very concerned with it, so it kind of followed that he wouldn't be either. And Ahab had taken a wife who was not concerned with following and loving and serving the God of Israel. Her name was Jezebel. Jezebel was from an area known as Sidon. And in this area, they had their own god. And this god's name was Baal. And Baal, this god, had this goddess consort known as Asherah. So when Ahab married Jezebel, Jezebel didn't say, hey, I'm going to come to you and I'm going to take on your faith or anything like that. No, she said, I'm coming, but I'm bringing my gods with me because they're more powerful. They're stronger. They're the ones I trust. Here's the trouble. God, or the God of Israel, had made a covenant with Israel that they were only supposed to serve and follow God. And so when Ahab, the king of Israel, makes an alliance with the kingdom of Sidon, where Jezebel is from, and marries her, that's how they cemented the alliance. When he does that and brings her in, and she brings all her prophets and prophetesses, and brings all her priests and priestesses for Baal and Asherah with her, he's breaking the covenant. And he's leading the people to adopt something that would also break the covenant. He's leading them astray. That's a problem. God can't allow that. So God closes up the heavens for 3 years. It doesn't rain. There's drought. And in an agrarian society, that's a major issue because if it doesn't rain, it doesn't just mean that it's dry and there's cracks in the ground. It means that people don't have food. And if people don't have food, they die. Well, Elijah said, look, we got to do something about this. So the Lord sends him to talk to Ahab. Elijah goes to Ahab and he says, hey, listen. And Ahab says, oh, great, you again. Actually calls him the troublemaker of Israel. He says, are you again? Yeah, Elijah says, yeah, me again. We got a problem, and you're it. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to get all your Baal and Asherah prophets and priestesses and all of them, and I want you to have them and you meet me at Mount Carmel. I want you to all meet us there. Now, we're talking 800 people here. We're talking about 800 people here, and all their servants that come with them, right? And when people start seeing this group of prophets and priests moving en masse to Mount Carmel, well, they get curious and they go follow and they want to show. So a lot of people show up to Mount Carmel where Elijah is waiting for all of them. And when they get there, Elijah says, okay, I'm glad y'all came because we got to settle this out. And he turns and he looks at all the people and he says, hey, listen, people, how long are we going to do this? How long are you going to go between God and Baal? You've got to make a choice. It doesn't work like you're trying to make it work. It doesn't work where you get to serve this God one day and this God this day, depending on the way you feel. And by the way, if we wanted to, we could just stop right there for today's message and let's talk about that. We could spend all day talking about that because so many of us do exactly that. We serve God when it feels good and when we're happy and everything seems to be going our way. But after that, we start doing whatever we want to do. But we got a lot more to talk about, so I won't stay there. That was for free. So he says, let's make a decision. And the people say, okay, let's do it. Elijah says, I have a proposition for how we can figure this out, how you can make the choice, how you can make the decision. And they say, fine, tell us. He says, all right, here's what we'll do. We're going to get 2 bulls, and we're going to make 2 altars. And on those altars, 1 bull here, 1 bull here, we're going to sacrifice those bulls. We're going to slaughter them, sacrifice them like we always would to the gods. This was a normal practice in those days. That's what we're going to do. Offer a sacrifice pleasing to the God. And Baal prophets and priests, y'all have this altar, and I'll take this one over here. And I'll let you go first. Whoever's God can call down fire from heaven to burn up that bull on this sacrifice that has wood underneath it. That's the God the people of Israel will serve. See, this isn't just a battle over whose religion is right. This isn't just an idea or a thought or a debate about whose God is actually real. They believed that all of these gods were real, most of them, right? This was a time of what we called henotheism. Right? Not polytheism, but just, some of them were polytheists, but henotheism. Most of these people believed that all of these gods existed, but they only believed that their God was the primary God, the ruling God, the God that should be worshiped and followed. And so when they would have wars and battles, what they believed was the God of the winning army was stronger than the God of the losing army. And so often, the people who were defeated adopted the God of the people who had just defeated them. So this, what's going on with Elijah, this really is about the future of Israel. Literally the future of Israel and what's going to happen with Israel and who Israel's going to serve. Now at this time, Elijah is the last prophet left. They've killed off all the other prophets of God. They've run them out of the country, all of them. So he says, you go first. Baal and Asherah prophets and priests. You go first. See if you can make it happen. So they get to going and they start dancing and they start shouting and screaming and they even start cutting themselves at one point, making themselves bleed to show their real devotion and dedication. And Elijah, it's pretty funny actually. If you go read this in 1 Kings 18, Elijah's sitting there and he's mocking them. He's mocking them. He's like, yeah, say it a little louder. Maybe he'll hear you now. You know, maybe he's just like in the bathroom or something. Maybe he's on vacation. Just keep yelling, keep going. Yeah, keep doing it. Just making fun of him the whole time, goading him, egging him on. After hours, nothing happens. Nothing. I'm sure these prophets were just shocked. And then Elijah comes up and says, all right, my turn. My turn. Before I do anything, though, I want you to go get me a lot of water and let's pour it all over this stuff. We're going to pour it all over the wood, all over the sacrifice, all over. We're going to pour all this wood, get it all wet. Well, you don't do that with fire. I don't know if you've ever built a fire. You don't light it with water. So they do all that he said. And then Elijah prays and asks God to light this thing on fire, and predictably, it does light on fire. And so all the people are like amazed. They're like, oh my goodness, God really is the only God we should be serving. We shouldn't be serving Baal. And they turn on the prophets, right? And then they take these prophets and they kill them all. That's the part that always really bugged me. That's the part that really always bothered me. I said, why would God want that? Now, here's the thing though, if you read closely, what you need to understand is this is what they did with people they felt were false prophets back in those days. This is what people did. I'm not saying that that's what God wanted. I'm not saying that God commanded it. I'm not even saying that Elijah necessarily commanded or wanted it. I'm just saying this is what they did in those days. That's how they handled it. That's how they stamped out false teaching in those days. Praise be, we're in 2021 and we don't do that anymore. But they died. And you have to imagine this scene. You have to imagine this scene. Imagine you're watching this as if it's a movie. Elijah turns, and his thunder's in the background, and looks at Ahab, the king, the guy whose wife brought all these foreign prophets and priests and gods into the land. Elijah turns and looks at Ahab. And Elijah turns and looks at him and says, hey, I know you're headed to Jezreel. I know you're headed to that winter palace of yours, and you're going to see Jezebel there. You better get going, because it's about to rain. And everybody's like, wait, it hadn't rained in 3 years. And he goes, yeah, I know, it's about to. Because the heavens are about to open up in a physical and a spiritual sense. God is back in charge around here. The people are turning their hearts back to God is what Elijah is basically saying. And so Ahab gets in his chariot and Ahab starts taking off and heading for Jezreel. Elijah ends up beating him to Jezreel. I don't know why he went to Jezreel. I don't know why he went there. Who knows? But he shows up and he's in the same spot as Ahab and Jezebel. And Ahab goes to Jezebel and says, hey, Jezebel, we got a problem. And Jezebel says, what is it? He says, well, all the prophets and priests of Baal and Asherah had a prophet off with Elijah. And now they're dead. And he's still alive. And this throws Jezebel. That throws her. Like, no way she expected something like that to happen, because these were the gods she had worshiped. This God was all powerful and strong and had made Sidon strong and powerful. And Sidon had been doing fine. And if that God isn't real, then there's something about her that isn't real. And she took this as a personal affront. So she sent word to Elijah and said, Elijah, may the gods be ever severe with me if I don't do to you by this time tomorrow what you have done to these prophets. Now, you would think that Elijah is this really strong, resolute dude, right? Like that. I mean, think about it. If you could make miracles happen, if you could pray and then God would make things catch on fire, you'd be pretty confident, wouldn't you? I would be. And then next time somebody made me mad, said, don't make me pray. Don't make me do it. But he's not. In fact, here's what we find out in 1 Kings. Elijah was afraid. Elijah was afraid. All that had to happen was the queen had to say, I'm going to make sure you die by tomorrow. And now he's afraid. God had done all of these things for him. God had proven God's self for him. Now Elijah's afraid and ran for his life. You ever been there? Everything's going fine in your life, everything's going well, and you know that the promises of God are true and that God fulfills God's promises to you, and then something doesn't go your way, then something is totally different, or something blindsides you out of nowhere, and suddenly you're afraid for your life. And you may as well be running for your life because you don't know what to do. He ran for his life. This guy that had just overseen one of the most incredible miracles of the Old Testament. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there. He said, you're staying here, I'm going to go on. Right? So we keep going. While he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, he separates so nobody can find him. That's how scared he is. This isn't just him going on a silent retreat somewhere. He came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. Interesting. One of the last times he prayed that God would bring fire down from heaven. And God did it. And now he's so scared that he's praying that he could die. Asking God, would you just let me die? What I know is that some of you in this room, you've had a very similar event in your life where you just felt like, man, I'm tired. I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. Here's what Elijah says. He's praying and he says, I've had enough, Lord. I've had enough. Take my life. Please, you take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. No better off than they were. This is how serious it is for him. He's not playing games. He's done. He's nervous. He's scared. He knows what's going to happen to him if Jezebel catches him. But then, he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. You ever been so exhausted emotionally that you just slept and you slept and you slept? I imagine that's about where Elijah was. Now, he'd been walking a lot and journeying, of course, but I think he was probably so exhausted emotionally and mentally, and probably spiritually and physically too, that he just lays down and goes to sleep. And then what happens next is kind of interesting. This angel comes and nudges him. This angel comes in and nudges him and says, hey, here's what I need you to do, Elijah. I need you to get up and eat this thing that I've made for you and drink this thing that I've made for you. Well, I don't know about that. Yeah, you've got a journey. So Elijah eats and Elijah drinks. And he goes back to sleep again. Angel nudges him again a little while later. Eat this, drink this. You've got a journey. Elijah does. And then Elijah goes on a long journey into the wilderness. A long journey into the wilderness by himself. And there he comes to a cave. And this is a cave where he can hide out. Nobody can get to him. Nobody can talk to him. Nobody can find him. Even his own servant doesn't know where he is. Like, he is all alone. And in that cave, don't you think it was dark? And don't you think he was all alone? And don't you think he had some time to reflect and to rest? And the word of the Lord came to him. What are you doing here, Elijah? What are you doing here? Why are you here? What's going on? He was so afraid that he ran because of what God had done. He was so afraid that he ran and he hid and he took shelter and refuge in a cave. The last thing Elijah says to God is, please take my life. And now God is saying to him, what are you doing here? Why are you in this place? Why are you feeling like this? Why is this what's going on with you? Now, I want you to go and read this in its entirety, but I'll give you a little bit of a spoiler alert here. God ultimately tells Elijah exactly what he needs to do. Ultimately says, all right, here's what you're going to do. Boom, 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 and boom. But I don't think that moment happens where God tells Elijah exactly what to do unless Elijah goes to that broom bush and falls asleep. Unless Elijah finds his way to that cave and hears, what are you doing here, Elijah? I say that because in those moments when we're so tense and there's so much anxiety and we're so angry or so confused and we just don't know what to do, when we're in those moments where we don't know what to do and we're overwhelmed by those things, it's really, really difficult to hear from God. It's really, really difficult to hear from God in those ways and in those times. Elijah was afraid for his life and he didn't know what to do, but he ended up going back after this episode with a plan of what to do that had come from God. The thing that changed was that he had some time to rest. So what I want to say to you and what I want you to remember is this. When you don't know what to do, rest. When you don't know what to do, just rest. I'm not saying sleep forever. I'm not saying avoid your problems by staying in your room all day. I'm saying you need to rest. Because when you're tense, you're anxious, and you're angry, and you're confused, and you feel overwhelmed, you're not able to hear very well from God. A lot of us, what we do is we just keep working harder and harder and harder to try and fix it. But what we really need to do is take a nap. A Sunday afternoon nap, maybe. What we really need to do is take a day at the beach or a weekend at the beach if you can. Or maybe what you really need to do is go to sleep an hour earlier and then take that hour, as long as you slept 7 to 9 hours, and get up an hour earlier. Get up an hour earlier. Spend some time alone with the Lord when it's dark outside and the world's not moving around. You're not getting text messages and calls and emails. Just rest. Now, this isn't just about sleep, by the way. This is about resting your brain a little bit. This is about resting in a bunch of different ways. The ancient Israelites had a system for this, a practice known as Sabbath. Right? Sabbath doesn't mean that I'm not working anymore. It doesn't mean that I'm just intentionally sitting down now that I'm exhausted. Sabbath is just intentionally stopping so that you can recover and so you can remember that you are the beloved of God. It's so easy to forget that. When we get wrapped up in stuff and doing all these things and everything becomes super important to us, Man, it's so easy to forget that we are the beloved of God. A rabbi named Abraham Joshua Heschel once said this: those who work with their hands should Sabbath with their minds, and those who work with their minds should Sabbath with their hands. Man, that's good. Here's why. How many times, just as a simple example, how many times Have you allowed your brain to slow down and just hear from God in the course of a normal day, right? How many times have you found yourself there? Not very often, right? For most of us, hardly ever. That's the whole point of prayer, is so that we can just spend some time alone with God. Sometimes you need a little something extra, a little bit of rest, a little bit of Sabbath, to intentionally take time. It's like this. You're going through your everyday life and you're trying to remember some stat. You're trying to remember some name, or you're trying to remember this, or you're trying to remember that, and you can't remember. I mean, despite your best intentions, you're searching all your files. You can't remember anything. And then you go and you take a shower, and what? Suddenly it just dawns on you, right? You're washing your hair and you're like, oh, I remember his name. I remember what year that was. I remember that phone number. Or something hit you out of the blue. I remember that. Or maybe you've been trying to figure out the answer to a question, and you're in there and you're just doing your hair, and all of a sudden you go, oh, I remember now. I remember what happened. I totally remember. Here's what I need to do. Here's how I need to handle this. Why are you able to do that? Because your brain was able to relax. Your heart was able to relax for a little bit. It's the same thing in our spiritual life. When we get overwhelmed and things aren't working so well and we don't know what to do next, sometimes when we'll just take some time to relax, suddenly we hear, what are you doing here, Elijah? What's going on with you? When we don't rest, we won't hear the voice of God. We won't feel the leading of God because we'll be obsessed with getting out of the situation we're in. So here's what I want to challenge you to do. Let me give you 5 things to think about. As you look for ways to make rest happen in your life, I want you to do a few things for me. First is this. Don't be afraid to take a mental health day. Don't be afraid to do that. Some days you just need to take a day and go to the beach. You've got the days. I think I read 768 million vacation days were left on the table in 2019 by Americans. 768 million. You earn those things. Take them. Take a mental health day. Your mental health is just as important as your physical health. And I also say, don't feel weird about taking your vacation days. They're yours. You earn them. They're part of your job. They're part of your benefits, if you have them. Do that if you can. The third thing is I want you to get sleep on purpose. Get sleep on, not just like I'll fall asleep in front of the TV for a few hours and then maybe sleep a couple more after that. No. Plan out when you're going to sleep. Plan out when you're going to rest. Those who fail to plan to fail, they say, right? Same thing applies to our sleep. I want you to feel the freedom to say no to some things. A lot of you got a lot of friends because you're awesome. And a lot of you got a lot of people who want to invite you to do things and do things with them and go to do this and go to that. Maybe you got a family that's over here doing it. Feel free to say no to some things. It's okay. People will still love you. I will still love you if you say no to me. It's okay. Here's the last thing. Plan out some times of rest. On my days off, I like to go to the beach. I like to go to the beach. But if I can't go to the beach, one of the ways I rest and one of the ways I Sabbath is like mowing my grass. That sounds weird, I know. But going back to that quote from Rabbi Heschel, man, it's funny. I do so much thinking and reading and stuff like that, that when I'm just doing stuff with my hands and I'm mowing the grass and I'm edging this and I'm chopping this down and I'm digging in the dirt, it's amazing how many times I feel God speaking to me. How many times God brings something to my mind. How many times God brings somebody like you to my mind. And I just start praying for you right there. So when you don't know what to do, I want you to remember to rest. Would you let me pray for you for a moment? Just bow your head and close your eyes just for a second, just to kind of get ourselves there. Nobody's going to ask you to do anything or mess with you. Holy Spirit, I pray that you would minister to our hearts. I pray for a healing just to begin taking place in our hearts and in our minds and in our lives. Help us to rest. Help us to find you where you are. But help us to rest and allow you to speak directly to us, to minister to us. Give us the courage to just sit. In the name of Jesus, amen.